I'm Lauren Wright, Dr. Lauren Wright, if you want a favor. Let's see. My career trajectory has been a traditional kind of accelerated one. I started in HR, in talent acquisition, and then I became an admissions and financial aid counselor. And then I became an assistant director. And then I became a senior assistant director. And then I became an associate director. And then I became a senior associate director. And then I became a director. And then I became a VP. And then I became a chief. And that was over 10 years. And I talk about that because I have had only a very linear trajectory where there's always the progress to the next thing. So ultimately experiencing a season of job transition has been something that has been jarring, right? It's like I'm used to being promoted, but I'm not used to being terminated. I became a C-suite executive before my 33rd birthday. And so being a woman of color, being someone so young, it's always been really exciting to be able to say, I am a chief executive such and such. And it's been inspiring to people. And so there's been many reasons why I have elevated my title as really a critical part of who I am. And so one of the things that people deal with job loss is they feel like they're losing a critical part of their identity. But also, as far as spiritual goes, related to what happens when you're experiencing a job transition from self-doubt to God confidence. And so started doing this as an addition to my devotional journey because that is really the place where I did experience some challenges. To say the first time I've lost my job was a confidence hit, right? Like I'm used to promoting, being promoted, thriving. And so this really reestablished who I am in Christ and who He says I am, and was very affirming for this season. God really put that time together intentionally because in my season related to job loss, I'm actually currently a coach for individuals who are in job transition. I've also had very many people who have lost jobs reach out to me for support, for resources and things like that. It was a result of position elimination. So it's not, you couldn't have performed better, you couldn't have impressed somebody differently, you couldn't have a whole list of things, right? None of that would have changed the circumstance. And that's hard. So that compounded with me just repeating to myself, God's will, God's way, God's will, God's. That phrase frustrates me still sometimes. It's like, what could that possibly mean? And it's like, how could your will not be for me to have gainful six-figure employment right now? Like, I don't understand how you can have any other will. Your will, I just cannot comprehend that. Because God, I will you to pay these bills, you know? So that has been challenging, but also just a period of growth to really be able to listen and wait to appreciate what that phrase really means and learn to relinquish control and say, you've got this. If you're waiting for you're underemployed, you're unemployed, you're experiencing a challenge or transition, I would say ask God for encouragement. Be open about it as much as you are comfortable because as an HR professional, I know there are a lot of people know this. You have to be in HR to know that there are hundreds of thousands of people experiencing this in this season. You are certainly not alone. The thing that I have had to really reiterate to people, and it has been nice they seem to have been comforted by it in some ways, is that like this current market is actually full of many unemployed, excellent performing people. And that can be scary from a competitive standpoint, but it's also, you're not alone in the sense of people often get concerned like, oh, our employer's going to be looking at me like, oh, you lost your job, it's because you're not good at your job. Well, no, right? Like maybe several years ago that would have been the case, but right now, no, because it's very visible that companies are restructuring, cutting positions, and top performers left and right are getting, let go from jobs. So it's not something that's talking about your character. It's not something that's talking about your performance. Sometimes you just will be out of an opportunity. But yeah, I mean, truly that God's will, God's way is the best plans for you, right? So like at the end of the day, the best plan for you is going to happen. Whether or not that looks like what you would expect, whether or not that means taking a step back or a leap forward or whatever the case may be, God has our best interests at heart. And so that's really, has been a core of this season. As things have gone right, as things have gone wrong, as things have been challenging, that has been very consistent, which has been wonderful. If you can treat the season as a privilege and be intentional about God's will, God's way, and listening in and really saying, like, what do you have for me, even if that's not linear, even if that's not the same job you were in before, even if it means like I was a chief and now I'm going to be a coordinator, being okay with that. And so I guess the prayer piece is like affirming leaps of faith, right? That's like just the prayer to say that if leaps of faith are taken and they're the right thing, that spirit of affirmation over fear, that's a great prayer spot. But good job primarily. If you can pray once, pray for the employment.